Hello, my darlings. This is Mrs. Welch for the Cavendish Fletcher Community Library, and it's story time. Apple time is coming soon, so I have a delicious book for you. It's called 10 Red Apples by Pat Hutchins. For my great-grandnephew, Owen. 10 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee! Fiddly-dee-dee. Horse came and ate one. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Nay, nay, fiddle-dee-dee. Horse, cried the farmer, save some for me. 9 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee! Fiddly-dee-dee. Cow came and ate one. Munch, munch, munch. Moo, moo, fiddly-dee-dee. Cow, cried the farmer, save some for me. 8 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Donkey came and ate one. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Hee-haw, fiddly-dee-dee. Donkey, cried the farmer, save some for me. 7 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Goat came and ate one. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Ma, ma, fiddly-dee-dee. Goat, cried the farmer, save some for me. 6 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Pig came and ate one. Oink, oink, fiddly-dee-dee. Pig, cried the farmer. Guess what he says? Save some for me. 5 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Sheep came and ate one. Nibble, nibble, nibble. Ba-ba, fiddly-dee-dee. Sheep, cried the farmer, save some for me. 4 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Goose came and ate one. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Hiss, hiss, fiddly-dee-dee. Goose, cried the farmer, save some for me. 3 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Duck came and ate one. Pick, pick, pick. Quack, quack, fiddly-dee-dee. Duck, cried the farmer, save some for me. 2 red apples hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Hen came and ate one. Peck, peck, peck. Cluck, cluck, fiddly-dee-dee. Hen, cried the farmer, save one for me. 1 red apple hanging on the tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Good, said the farmer. You saved one for me. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. 0 red apples hanging on the tree. My, fiddly-dee-dee. No red apples to bake in a pie. Bye, fiddly-dee-dee. Look, cried the farmer, another apple tree. More red apples hanging on a tree. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. Good, cried the farmer's wife, you saved them for me. Yippee, fiddly-dee-dee. And this has been 10 Red Apples and Mrs. Welch for the Cavendish Fletcher Community Library. I'll see you soon.